Google Sites using images as a background. The most important thing to remember about using an image as the background instead of a color is that it's important that you download a high definition image as your background to make sure that it's not blurry. Notice if I take a look at the practice folder I've created for a Disney website, and if I click on the images labeled background, they're quite large. They're large because when I downloaded them, when I did a search for backgrounds, I actually searched for high definition wallpaper backgrounds. So Disney um, wallpaper HD. And that way you know that you're getting a really high quality, large image that has a lot of pixels. So do make sure that you download really high def images. In order to insert an image as a background, and I've done that here, but notice it doesn't look real well, and I'll talk about that. Remember, you go to the gearbox, which is your settings adjustment, and down to manage site, and then over to colors, themes, and font down here. If you want the image to cover the entire page, including the very bottom, which right now is white, go ahead and make sure that under entire page background, you go down to, I'm going to make the color none because I want my background to cover everything that is now purple, and you click on image and over to the image, and then go ahead and select an image. I'm going to try the cartoon characters background. Okay, so now I have at least, it doesn't really look good, but for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to focus on technique. Looks like I forgot to hit save, so let's go back to image. I'm going to make the color none, and now I have a chance to choose a nicer background. I think I will try the castle in the air. Okay, and one thing I didn't do before was click save. And if I go back, notice how I have actually covered the entire page with an image. Now obviously this is not a good color combination, but I would change that. One thing you should be aware of is that you can manipulate the images if you bother to take a look at the options, which are pretty interesting. So if I go back to themes, colors, and fonts, and go over to my image, notice there's a little options. And I can actually play around with the way things look. And you know, the way your website looks is one of the most important factors in the web design world, and it makes sense to play around with the options and see what selecting them does to the final product. I don't really like what it did since it got rid of my castle, but again, that's easily changed. If I go back down to manage site and then over to themes and colors and fonts. Let's wait a minute while we get there. Now, another option, if you want, is to put your image here instead of here. You want to be careful that it doesn't cover up the text and that it matches the logo, but that could be an interesting option. And to do that, you would go to Site Header and go ahead, instead of a color for the site header, you would choose an image. I got rid of the color, so this image popped in there. Or I could go over here and choose a different image. Now you might be wondering what not to do. And here's what you should not do. Don't go to entire page, background, and don't choose the wrapper image. Because what that does is it puts an image in there which is not going to cover the entire page, and you're going to end up with the bottom. Do you see how the bottom here is a different color, and it just doesn't look very good? Those are what you should play around with and spend some time making your websites look really, really sharp.